I'd want to say to start off with that despite the difficulties of the last 2 weeks, they have in fact highlighted the enduring and deep commitment that all major political parties in Australia have to the State of Israel. They have shown the special relationship that all major parties have. Australia's friendship and alliance with Israel has been a bipartisan affair since at least the late 1950s. Now we're here, of course, because of the events last week. My view is that the events of last week have, in the response that's come in Australia from the Australian government, shown the strength of the relationship with Israel. There has been a massive amount of misreporting internationally, obviously, about this event. All of you would have seen that. I think as you came in, you were handed a leaflet of flotilla facts, and you could simply look at that list of flotilla facts and think about how few of those facts have actually made their way into the mainstream media as yet. And I'd say very few. So too has there been misreporting of the position of the Australian government, starting with misreporting of the Prime Minister's comments at the very end of a lengthy press conference on Tuesday, but happily cleared up by him and by the Foreign Minister in direct statements in Parliament on the Wednesday. Importantly, the Australian government has called on the Israeli government to establish an independent inquiry into the incident so that the facts can be established. This is an independent Israeli inquiry, which is what is being called for. The Australian government understands only too well the damage that was done by the Goldstone report and the way in which it has been elevated to the status, the false status, of a judicial inquiry, and we are very concerned that there should be no repetition of a Goldstone in relation to this incident. There is a need for an inquiry so that the facts can be independently established. There is a need for an inquiry to be conducted with some kind of scrutiny and transparency, but what's most important is that it be one which is controlled by Israel or directly involving Israeli officials and not something which is conducted by the United Nations. The Australian government has reiterated our support for Israel, the special relationship with Israel, and recognised the unique security challenges which Israel has faced for many years and is facing right now, not just from Hezbollah in the north, not just from Hamas in Gaza, but from Iran and the terrorist organisations which Iran supports. The government has recognised, and the Prime Minister has spoken of this, of the need for Israel to prevent arms shipments into Gaza. There has been a direct recognition by the government of why there is an Israeli blockade, the need for it, the demonstrated need for it, and we know of the demonstrated need from it from the interception of a range of attempted arms shipments over recent months. It's significant that we are calling for additional humanitarian aid, because I think everybody here would have observed in the coverage of these events over the last week that disgracefully all of the mainstream media in Australia has allowed the impression to be created that no humanitarian aid is reaching Gaza. Everybody here knows the falsity of that proposition. There are very, very large volumes of aid reaching Gaza, something in the order of 15,000 tonnes per week. And just to put that in context, this entire flotilla of 6 ships had on board a total of about 10,000 tonnes. So less than a week's worth of what is currently entering Gaza with the assistance of Israel. One of the things that needs to be made clear is that Israel has a complete right to protect itself against the importation of arms, and that context is the context that needs to be made clear. Israel has a responsibility to protect its citizens, and Australia recognises that responsibility. Israel is entitled to create a blockade and entitled to maintain a blockade to prevent the flow of weapons. I have no doubt that Israel was legally and morally correct in seeking to prevent the flotilla from reaching Gaza. The challenge is to make sure that that message gets across to the world, and for us here in Australia, gets across to our fellow Australian citizens so that they can begin to understand the context in which that occurred.